afternoon. Okay, full disclosure, I've been traveling for about 40 hours straight, so I'm a little loopy. But thank you for coming. I'm going to talk a little bit about my approach to improvisation. So it's kind of a huge topic to have for a discussion, but and I want you all to feel free to ask me any questions that you have about what I'm saying, or if you just have any questions right off, just put your hand up and say it. I thought I would talk about a few different topics pertaining to jazz improvisation, because I think before you even start to improvise, there's a few things you need to really think about before you start to really play and think about, okay, how do I learn how to improvise? This is your most valuable asset right here, your ear, and you just have to spend hours and hours listening to music. There's no other way to learn this language. It's an oral language. There's we can talk about scales and arpeggios and all of that, and technique. That's all great. I love it. I do it, and I will talk about that today. But we just all need to realize that you have to listen to the music. You have to listen to jazz. You have to listen to people improvise. It seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how little people spend doing that. And I make sure, even as a professional musician, that I spend a lot of time listening to music. So that's number one, and it's all kinds of music, really, because you draw, whatever you like. You can. That's one of the beautiful things about jazz. We can draw from any types of music. Some of the music we're playing in the Jazzaar, in the big band, is influenced by Mozart. Who would think? But it works, and it sounds great. So that's the first thing. And I actually was going to try to type out a list of some people to listen to, but in the end, you have to find out what artists you like. It doesn't even have to be your instrument, but I think that's probably the most important thing, and especially, I live in New York City, so I'm a little bit more exposed in I shouldn't say that. I don't know what the jazz scene is here, but it just seems to me New York has a pretty big jazz scene, so there's a lot going on all the time. So I'm kind of always exposed to it. It's a little bit harder when you get away from big cities like New York. You just have to spend that time listening. So then the next step is transcribing. That's, to me, is, again, technique, scales, keys, tunes, all of that's important, but you've got to transcribe solos. You've got to go out there and say, okay, what did Clifford Brown play? Again, I'm a professional musician. I did that for this gig. We had a list of a bunch of tunes, even tunes that I'm not even soloing on. I went and found recordings of some of my favorite musicians playing it, and I transcribed their solos because it gets me inside the song. But it's so important that you all do that. Some of you are looking at me like, yeah, it's obvious, but again, it wasn't even obvious for me. Even now, I'm looking back on my life and say, I should have transcribed more solos. So if you start now and really, really start devoting practice time to transcribing and listening, I think that's important, So, for an example, if I practice during the day, it's not just all on my horn. Some of it's on the piano, some of it's listening to music, some of it's transcribing. So you need to think more like that in your practicing, and sometimes that means you need to break your practicing up, because practicing for 3 hours straight, you're going to get a lot more done if you do 45 minutes, 2 hours later, and 20 minutes later. You're going to get way more out of it because your brain works better when you can focus. Again, it seems unrelated to improvisation, but how you practice is really important, because to retain the information, you have to be really focused. And the longer you spend doing something, the more your mind starts to go, like my mind is right now. What am I saying? But and again, any questions about that? Do you all? I'm going to ask you. How do you feel about that? Does that seem like something that you're very aware of, or something you could do better at? Yeah.
With transcribing, you mean write it down or just play it on your instrument the same way?
Both works well. You know, certainly you have to be able to execute it on your instrument. I think just listening and writing it down, there's something lost if you can't play it. But in terms of either writing it down and playing it, you know, definitely play it. You can learn solos and not write it down, and it helps. But the really nice thing about writing it down is you can really get more analytical, and then you can bring that into your more technical side of practicing, because what you end up finding is, you know, with only 13 notes to choose from, 12 notes to choose from, there's like a lot of things in the language that kind of comes up and repeats over and over again. And then you'll notice it's just turned around or flipped upside down. So it really helps you to see that when you write it. You know, I find when I write transcriptions down, I can really see things. Oh man, that's a really cool lick. And you can see where it lies in the chords. You can take that and take it to other songs. So, so those are just two kind of really important things that really trump any of the other stuff we talk about, because most of the musicians that we love and enjoy from throughout the years, they didn't spend a lot of time necessarily talking about B flat 7 and A flat sharp 9, and they spent a lot of time playing and listening. You know, that's how they learned to improvise, you know. And I still think it's the best way. It's the most direct way, and it fits in with what the music is about, you know, where it came from. So let's zero in a little bit more technically about transcribing. That was a good question about whether you write it down. So how do you improvise? Okay, well, there's a lot, like I said, it's a huge subject. One of the things that we all have to really have under our fingers to improvise are scales. Okay, so you have all kinds of scales, from the major scale, right? You have the minor scale. Those are your two kind of main ones. And I tend to try to really basically get through all keys every day of the major and minor. I'll also usually have a scale in a month or a week that I'll just be kind of fooling around with, working on. Maybe say like, I don't know how technical we are here. Has everybody here know a little bit about jazz theory or chords? You all know about changes? Okay, cool. So so I'll take like a Lydian dominant scale, which is like Lydian is like the fourth mode of the major scale. So if you're in C major and you start on F but use all the notes in C major, that's the Lydian mode. Dominant refers to anybody? Flat 7. So I'll take that scale, and that'll be my like special scale that I work on. But the point is, you really have to devote every day practicing this stuff, you know, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it's connected to jazz because you're like doing all these technical scales, but what it does is it really gets you used to thinking about chords and playing lines on chords, you know, and you just have to really get comfortable with that. So I would say every day you got to practice scales. You know, you just have to, keys have to become not really an issue. B should not be any different than B flat, you know, and unfortunately we've kind of lost that along the way. You know, it's similar what it happens in classical music. 2 years ago, classical musicians improvised. That was expected of classical musicians, you know, in Bach's days, Mozart. They don't do it so much anymore. And in jazz music, it was expected before you even got on the stage to play that you knew all your keys, you knew a whole bunch of tunes. Like it was part of just becoming a good musician. Today, people kind of skirt around it, play, you know, get hip and try. But you got to know your keys and you got to practice your scales. Some ways I practice my scales, and this is important, don't just do the same way all the time. If you just play C, D flat, E, D, and you just do that every day and you run them up and down, you're not really getting the essence of what you're trying to do, which is to get comfortable in playing those scales any direction, starting from any note, volumes, playing loud, playing soft. These are all really good practice techniques that don't take, you know, it can be just a spur of the moment thing. Oh, I'm going to play mezzo piano. in fourths, or I'll play forte, or I'll crescendo and decrescendo. These are things, little practice things that help you to make music of the scales. And you can practice in thirds, in fourths, in fifths. And I know you've all heard this, but I'm really trying to drive it home because it's like a building block of how I approach improvisation, just knowing my scales and my keys. Augmented scale, diminished whole tone, all the modes of the melodic minor, which is where the Lydian dominant comes in. It's a mode of the melodic minor scale. So, and you can just start with major scales, and you really should really focus on major scales for a while. Go up and down and up, play it in minor thirds, play C major, up and down 2 octaves, then E flat major, then G flat major, or F sharp. So switch it up, turn it around. Don't just do the same thing all the time, because that gets you, that's a different mindset. You want to be flexible. You want to kind of fool yourself and constantly changing it up, especially with scales, because they can also get kind of boring. And speed with scales is another important thing. As a trombone player, maybe not apply to saxophone players and piano players so much, but it really helps us to develop our different tonguing techniques. If you're a trombone player, we have to use a double tongue or a doodle tongue. So playing up and down scales is a great opportunity for us to practice that and also get inside a key tonal centers. So scales, I'll stop talking about scales. You heard enough. Now you know what to do. You can probably spend 2 years just on what I just said, because there's so many variations of how you can do that. And you'd be surprised if you focus on it every day. I think that's the key. You get better. You notice it right away. You know, it's when you kind of do it a little bit for 3 or 4 days, rocking hard, and then, oh, I missed another day. Do it another 3 or 4 days. Oh, I missed 2 or 3 days. Every day, hit it, and you'll notice improvement. You know, that's the main thing about practicing, I think, which applies to any kind of music, improvisation or whatever. So scales. Now, chord change, I think one of the major things that after scales is learning songs. There's so many young players don't know a lot of the old songs, you know. You've got to know this, like I said, it's an oral music. So to be able to play jazz, in my opinion, you kind of have to know where it comes from. It comes from a lot of music. You know, there's a lot of tunes that if you go set up on a bandstand, people are going to expect you to know, you know. And if you really learn a lot of tunes, even if you don't know a tune, it probably is like a tune that you know and that you can kind of pick it up quickly. But if you just have your favorite little tunes, giant steps and, you know, some really cool tune, that's great. Learn that too. But know, you know, like know all the things you are, or the tunes we're doing with the big band are great. You know, Don't Get Around Much Anymore, Lover Man, you know, Charlie Parker. All of these tunes were recorded by artists. So get inside those tunes, learn the recordings, learn the chords, play the scales on the chords. I could have a big, long, exhaustive list of tunes, but it's all there for you. You know, we have YouTube. You know, just put in any artist that you like, and you'll see a bunch of standards. But you really have to spend time just learning standards. The way you do it, obviously, is listening. But I go to the piano first. You know, that's, to me, is the best way for me to learn a song. I play trombone, but I go to the piano first, and I play the chords and the melody, and then there's something about tactily seeing it and playing it and seeing how the chords stack. You just get a more intimate relationship with what the song is all about than if you're just playing your single note instrument. You know, you see what I'm saying? So again, it takes away from your horn practicing, you know, but it gives back, because the time spent there, you would translate it to your horn. So, and you know, I feel like I'm leading up to something huge here, but this is all so important, you know, all of these kinds of things, because, and the reason I say that is because everybody who I enjoy playing, they have all that together. Antonio Hart, if you ask him to play Cherokee and B, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, he'll burn it right here, right for you, because it's like he's put the time in. You see what I'm saying? So now's the time. You're young, you got time. When you get to be my age, I got 2 kids. I have 2 toddlers, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I have to beg my wife for practice time. You don't have to do that now. You can just go and lock yourself in a room and practice, practice, practice. So do it. Learn those tunes. So we've got our scales. We've learned a bunch of tunes. Now, what do I do? How do I improvise? How do I play? Okay, well, I think notwithstanding, let's just all assume that we're talking about a blues here. Let's just talk about a blues. 12-bar blues. It's everybody knows what the changes are. Even within that, it's a little baited because there's different ways to play the blues. You know, you have blues that go to a 5 chord right away at the end. There's a blues, a bird blues. Everybody know what a bird blues is?
Sure.
Okay.
Charlie Parker, you mean?
Well, there's a term we use. It's called the bird blues. Yes, Charlie Parker, but I don't know if he coined the term, but I think people just use it to refer to like Blues for Alice, you know, so, but it's a blues, you know. And then you'll find also, in going back and listening to W.C. Handy and all of these older musicians, which you all need to, Louis Armstrong, go back there, reach back there, dig in, learn the music. Blues comes in all kinds of forms, 16 bars, 12 bars. So let's just talk about the 12-bar blues. I think it's a good place to start and not to start. I do it I practice the blues pretty much every day or every other day, practicing the keys. So just try to make melodies. That's my thing. I try to improvise starting out with melodies. You know, not, you know, I mean, in a big band situation, sometimes you can't do that because you got 16 bars, go, you know, and you got to just come right out. But always think to yourself of some kind of like flow, some kind of, you're trying to tell a story. So if you come out right away, where are you going to go with that? So kind of start out with simple motivic ideas. It's just always good. And if you listen to Train or Bird, you'll see them do that a lot. They'll start simply, and then they'll develop. And then somewhere along in the solo, they'll play more and more and more. You'll just hear it. And when you transcribe, you'll see it. So it's just a good kind of a global way of thinking about approaching a solo. Okay, I'm not going to come out right away playing loud and hard and fast. I'm going to kind of ease into it. Slide Hampton gave me that advice, and he said, "Listen, you're not Charlie Parker, so don't try to just come out and take it easy. Start slow." You know. And I was like, "Oh, okay." The other thing is, now that we've established we're trying to do melodies and motives, it's so hard to talk about jazz, I'm realizing, because it's really, I want us all to have our horns and to play. You know, that's kind of where my mind is. But if I'm just giving you advice about improvising, I would say once you have all the scales and you're trying to develop your solo, you've got to be yourself. Okay? You've got to say something from you. It's just so obvious when somebody's just kind of playing licks or they're just trying to imitate somebody. And that's really, to me, that can be helpful in practicing. But when you're improvising, if you want to be an improviser, you have to put yourself into it. You have to kind of forget all that you've learned and just let yourself speak through. But keeping all of these, practicing all of these things that I'm talking about, the scales and the tunes and listening to music and trying to develop your solo, it's important. But when it comes time to blow, I kind of forget all that. You know what I mean? I kind of just try to play, try to make music, try to tell a story. Any questions about that? Of course. What is he talking about? How do you? You know, you get it from your life. You know, I guess when I'm playing and I'm really feeling good, first of all, I'm prepared. I've learned the tune. I know all the chords. I've arpeggiated all the changes up and down. I've even figured some stuff out to play in some hard, like figured if there's like a really hard change in some tune you have to play on, get some stuff down for it. You'll find that the people that we love so much, they've done that. Clifford Brown, Charlie Brown, there's things that they'll do that'll be in a solo where there's a tricky place or that works something out. That's okay. As long as it comes naturally, it's okay to do that. Me as a trombone player, I do that. JJ did it. I'll say, okay, well, those changes are really wacky. I'm going to figure some way to kind of get in there, some slick way. I may not play it exactly the same, but it's important that you get those problem areas out. In other words, work on any problem areas that you have. So it's hard to talk about how to be yourself. I guess, how do you forget and be yourself? It is a little bit of a risky kind of thing. You have to be willing to mess up. You have to be willing to be wrong and make a mistake. I think that's probably where you can find that. If there's something inside of you that's really worried about sounding bad or doing that can get in the way of what I'm trying to get you to do. So if there's any of that in your mind, and in a way, jazz is really liberating that way. Because when you're really playing, you're kind of free. You kind of feel free. You've done all your practicing, and everybody's just playing together, and you're just riding over the changes. And you're not necessarily even thinking about changes, but you're using all the stuff that you practiced with the scales. That brings me to another point I want to talk about. So we're improvising, and we're improvising with a band. We've got a drummer. Jesus, look at all those drums. Wow. So you've got to listen to the rhythm section because it's really improvising. Once you get all your stuff together and you plop yourself in a band, you have to listen to what's going on around you, react, and adjust. Hopefully you're with a rhythm section that's really in tune with what you're doing. I play in Ron Carter's big band, and he's very in tune with what everybody's doing, but sometimes he'll take you someplace. And if you're just thinking, well, I'm going to go here, you better be listening too when you're playing with Ron Carter. Some advice, because if you're not, he'll listen to you, and he may not hire you again because you have to listen to what he's playing all the time. And that's really good advice for any improviser. You kind of, and it's hard to do, and you can practice it by listening to music. What is the bass player playing? What is the piano player playing? Listen to a track over and over again and concentrate on one instrument. That's a good piece of advice. I do that sometimes. And just really even try to cop what they're doing sometimes on another instrument. I play a little bass. Sometimes I fool around and play the bass lines. Definitely try to figure out voicings of piano players that I'm listening to. So you're in the band, you have to listen to everybody because the piano player is playing one thing, the bass player, and fortunately and unfortunately, since this is such an oral music and not so much written down, people have different ways of playing changes. Loverman is a great example. It's like there's so many different ways. Basically every artist plays it a different way. They have just certain places in there where the chords move. Just a lot of opportunity to put different things in there. So you have to be listening, because if you're trying to make something happen and you're hearing that, okay, well, they're playing it a different way, they're not hearing it, you can make everybody sound better by getting into the groove of what's happening harmonically. I'm speaking harmonically. Does that make sense? Is everybody acutely aware of that? And it's like everything I'm saying, I'm feeling like this, you must do this all the time. I'm feeling like it's so important, and it really is. I mean, improvising is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. You don't do it as a hobby, I don't think, really. I think it takes intense study, and really it has to be part of who you are. To me, that's if I hear somebody who's improvising, the people that I like how they improvise, that's what they've done. It's part of their life.
It's a life study. So the next big thing, and this might even come before the harmonic thing, is the drums. Okay, we playing with Carl Allen today. I was listening to him the whole time for where to put my notes. When you're improvising, it's the same thing. You've got to play kind of a duet with the drummer when you're improvising, okay? If you're not, it's going to sound like it. You're not playing together. And that's a lot of a feel thing, even a swing thing. Because swing and time is not meant to be exact. It's really, even your heartbeat is not exact, but it's rhythm. See what I'm saying? So rhythm to me is more, a friend of mine put it this way, Dick Oates was saying, think more horizontally with rhythm. Don't think of rhythm. And if you, like, a good example, everybody go check out, after this thing, go check out the recording of Herbie Hancock playing Dolphin Dance and Freddie Hubbard's playing a solo. You can tell everybody is completely together, but if you listen to where the beat is, it's fat. I call it a fat beat. In other words, the time is not like in this like small, like the time is not in this really tiny spot. It's this big spot where everybody knows where it is and they all kind of play together, but it's not, it's a hard thing to explain, but if you go listen to that, you'll know what I mean. You know, you just listen to the way he puts his eighth notes. It's like, it's not up and down, it's more this way. So if you can learn to play that way and to understand that vibe, you'll get a better understanding of the beat. Because that's another thing that you really notice in young improvisers, the time. Where's the time? They're rushing, they're slowing down. But if you really get in tune with what the drummer's doing and you think about that a lot and you practice it, it will become more, you'll become more in tune with the time and how to play over it. It's kind of another level after you can, you know, get all the other stuff that we were talking about together, because it does take it, and it takes the whole band to make that happen, I think, you know. But in your soul, listen to the music and really try to understand what I'm saying about that fat, wide beat, you know, because you're listening, I'm listening to Freddie, and it's not like da 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 da. It's not even like right. He's kind of going back and forth, but it's all in there. It's all in the beat. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about when you check it out. You have a question?
Yeah. Do you give some advice to how could we learn so to make so time bigger? It's like this, just to understand it so bigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is listening, because it even kind of opened my eyes recently, because I was really listening to it, and I just kind of, I've heard that term before, fat beat. I mean, okay, so let me break it down. If you listen to different bands, let's take like the Ellington band and the Basie band, and I'll say like the Vanguard band I play in, which is the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis band. You listen to those bands, it's a very, you can hear that there's something really different about the way they play the time, you know? So it's just a matter of listening and trying to figure out for you, how do you explain that? And where does it lie? You know, for Basie, it's kind of like, to me, everybody, like if you think the beat is this big and you can play anywhere in it, Basie's like back here, you know, on the top. You know, a band like Maria Schneider might be a little bit right in the middle or just in front. Duke Ellington, right down the center, it seems like, you know, like Percy Heath. Just straight. So, you know, I mean, listen to like Elvin Jones. How does he play time? You know, it's like so... It's just so bouncy, so, you know, advice of how you do that, you just got to listen and just keep playing and listening. I mean, that's why I said the first thing is listening, because some of this stuff you can't teach. I can't, you know, I can't teach you how to do it. You know, I can teach you what 1 + 1 is, but I can't teach you how to play differently on a beat. I think the best way to do it is to prepare, because and that is doing all this stuff before, really having your instrument become more like your voice, you know, so you're getting away from thinking about fingerings and keys. The only way to do that is to actually practice all that every day, and then you can really kind of start to kind of feel where to put things in, you know. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not always there. Every day I'm working I'm just like you. I'm a student of the music. My students, I think we're all in the same kind of thing. We're trying to learn, it's just like, it's going to be forever for me. I'm never going to stop trying to work on changes. So just get as much of that. And then when you're really confident here, and for me as a brass player, sometimes it's for us, it's chops, really have your chops together. Do your long tones. For us, we have a whole extra set besides, that the piano players and the horn players that stick the reed on. Well, you have to get your reeds together. That's another thing. But we have to spend time just maintaining this, like doing very strict long tones and slurs and really making sure. Because I think getting at being able to play different time, you just have to be really comfortable on your instrument, comfortable with the tune, and then you can ride over it. If you're in any way stopped up, that's the first thing that's going to go is your time, right? That's the first thing. It's the first thing everybody hears. So just, you have it inside of you. That's my other advice. The time, you have a heartbeat. It's there. One of my first teachers always used to talk about the heartbeat, and it's a really good analogy. It's always there, beating. That's time. You have time in you, and it's just letting it out. I know it's a little bit, spiritual, but it's true. And the music is spiritual. And when you hear Train playing over some changes and doing all this, that sounds spiritual to me, especially when you get inside and start to look at what notes he's playing and how absolutely beautiful they line up, because sometimes it's a little intimidating, oh, I can't do that. But if you get inside, that's another great thing about transcribing, write it down. You find the simplicity and the beauty of improvisation, because it's really not about being, super slick and super fancy. It is about the time. In the feel. And that's what I think draws us in with some of these great artists, how they play that time. I was just checking out a Train solo, a good one to check out, very accessible for everybody, Olio with Miles Davis, the first few choruses. A lot of just eighth note runs, but you see how simple it is, but the way he phrases, the way he, it's beautiful. Way he ghost notes, the way he plays the time, it's like, I can't even sing it, but it's just, you just feel like dancing when you hear it, So does that kind of answer your question, or sort of, kind of?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in the rhythm section, we're playing, we're listening, we're starting to play starting not so crazy. Don't do your best stuff right away. Save it for the second or third chorus, or how many, and then you want to always be invested in the tune. Obviously, some tunes I'll know. Sometimes I'll have to be presented with a tune I don't know and have to cite rechanges. So I'm going to play a little bit differently. I'm kind of really trying. I'm going to play less. I'm going to really try to focus in on that, because I think it's important to always be able to play the tune. I always don't really mind if my students go off and do whatever. I'm very open and very, liberal when it comes to how somebody plays jazz. That doesn't mean I don't think everybody should not practice all those fundamentals I said. I just mean once you get up there and you start playing, whatever's cool. But I think if you can't execute the tune, if you can't really play inside like that, and then you go off and do some crazy stuff, I don't think what you're doing is informed by the music that you're playing. You're just kind of you might as well be playing with doing anything. So that's the only part that I think is important, really having an understanding of what you're playing and how it has to do with what everybody else is playing. I think, for me at this point in how I feel about it, I may not have always felt that way, but I feel that way now. I think that's important, So I'm kind of getting into how I would approach it if I'm playing. Now, if I really know the tune and I really know the band, we've played together, and we can kind of go some places a little bit more. You can reach a little bit more. Does anybody know what I mean by the upper structures of the chord? Let's say you got a C7. C9. Now, the dominant chord has two notes in it that kind of make the dominant chord sound what it is. What are those two notes? Third and the seventh, right? So in C, it's an E and a B flat, right? Okay. So now, it's a tritone. So what's unique? What's kind of a unique thing about the tritone? It's an equal division of the octave. So that means the notes, and this is a little bit of a jump, but they can switch their place in the chord because they're the equal division. It's a little bit of a jump, but it makes mathematical sense. So that C chord with the E and the B flat, that E and the B flat can actually interchange either way. They can be the third or the seventh. So that's how we get, because a lot of times you always hear tritone sub, tritone sub. Well, this is why the tritone sub works, because in equal division away from that C, well, now you have an F sharp 7 with the same two notes. They've just reversed their functions. So I just like to try to explain how to my students why that tritone sub works. It's because of that, because of those two notes. Now, another thing, if you take that a little bit further and add a note, so C7, if you add a flat 9, which we come across a lot in music, you know, flat 9, now you have, that's a fully diminished chord. Same principles apply to this, the uniqueness. Right? So they can be stacked over and over and over again. Every note can be every other note in that chord. In other words, that bottom note, the E, can be the third or it can be the seventh. The G can be the fifth or it could be the tritone, you know, or the flat 9, I'm sorry, the fifth or the flat 9. The B flat can be the seventh or the third or the flat 9. They can all be the chord. So what that ends up giving you is 4 different chords. C chord, E flat chord, G flat chord, and the A chord. So they all share this diminished chord. All of those flat 9 dominant chords, all the third apart, share that same fully diminished triad. So now I'm getting to the good part. So now you can play on a C7, you can play all 4 of those triads. Okay, and you can play some really nice stuff, you know. So like, so I'm not a piano player, obviously. So if you were really slick and a piano player, you could play all of those chords over, let's say, Caravan. Next time you shed Caravan, just get out, okay, you C7 flat 9 or whatever the chord is, and you just start playing those different triads, all 4 of those triads, a minor third apart. It's a really slick way. So this is like a little window into one little way that you can introduce some kind of different harmonic things into your playing that goes above just learning the 1, 3, 5, 7, 2 5s, because we all know about 2 5s, right? Da, da, right? Right? Ba 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 be ba 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 ba. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, 4. So that's just like 2 5s. We can get into all that, practice all that, and then what I mean by that is 2 5s are kind of like before you get to this other thing that I'm talking about now. But I don't have time to go through the history of jazz, and I have the feeling you guys have at least an understanding of that kind of movement, 2 5, right? So I like to use augmented sound on dominant chords too. So it's real easy. You just play the, right? So those are just the augmented triads on a dominant chord. If you have a 7 chord that's a +5, you can just play all triads off of each note. And it all works because it's symmetrical. So that's another hip little thing. So take your C7, sharp 5, and play, you know, C augmented triad, D augmented triad, E augmented triad, F sharp augmented, and then change it up. I mean, just talking about it, just that one scale, you could spend quite a bit of time really practicing it up and down octaves, you know, 2 octaves, going in different directions, breaking it up into different ways. Boo, 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 bee, boo, boo, bee, boo, boo, bear, or boo, bee, boo, bee, boo, bee, boo. And that's just on one. You do it on all of them. Boo, 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 bee, ba, boo, 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 ba, boo, boo, bee, boo, boo, bee, boo, boo, bee. So there's all these ways that you can take this one little idea and keep doing it around. And that's a huge part of how you can start to develop what you like and what you might do differently. You take what you already know and then try to work some stuff out that you like doing, you know. And it's more of a mind thing. It's more of just trying to keep your mind open and flexible to constantly developing ideas, because when you're improvising, that's what we're doing. We're developing all of these ideas. So any questions about this very quick, fast harmonic example of what, yeah.
So over C7 you play E flat, F sharp, A, and C.
Yeah, we have to be real specific. It's a C7 flat 9 because because if it's just a C7, you can go there, but you can also go other places. If it's just a C7, that would be you introducing, okay, well, let's put a flat 9 on it. And then you can play C triad, E flat triad, G flat, F sharp triad, and A triad. And you can actually even play those dominant chords too. They work too. They're all related. In other words, does everybody know what the bebop scale is? Yeah, you add a note, and you can do it to a major scale. Basically, you're trying to, and you hear bebop players do this all the time. They're trying to line up so that the chord tones, boo ba doo dee doo. I'm saying bo doo da doo da doo da dee dee. So all the chord tones are on a beat, right? So that's all this is doing. So you're putting an extra note in the scale, and you can do it with any scale, and you can put it between any whole step. We know the bebop scale. Be be dee be dee be dee be be dee dee. I can't sing. Let me just play it. We know what it is. Let me see where's. Okay. This is terrible. Ba ba da 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 da. So you could really literally play the A7. If you had a C7, you could play the A7 bebop scale over it. Yeah. So it's you know, it'll sound pretty stiff at first if you're not doing it. You know, all of these things I'm saying, I would say don't do this out on the bandstand until you really get it down under your fingers. You know, you can try it at a sessions or when you're practicing with people, but you know, you want to really try to get, you know, one of my students was telling me, we were working on double tongue. He's like, yeah, I've been really working hard on tongue, but I don't break it out yet because I'm not. And that's actually, you know, it's kind of good advice. You know, really work on this stuff. There's a fine line between going out there and trying everything that you have, and going out there and just trying enough to where you're really comfortable with, and maybe stretching a little bit. But if you're just kind of like plug in all these harmony things while you're playing, then it becomes a practice session. You're not really doing the part of playing, improvising that's the most important, which is being yourself and telling your story. You know, I mean, that's the most important, I think, when you're playing, is being yourself and telling a story. So don't lose that part of it in all of this that I'm talking about. Don't ever lose that, you know, and don't ever lose the creativity. You know. Go ahead, yeah.
How do you practice playing outside?
Right. Good question. So, you remember what I said about outside? I didn't use the word outside, but I was talking about outside playing when I said if you're kind of playing over the changes and away from it, that's exactly what that would have been the word I should have used, outside playing. So as long as it's informed, I mean, for me, right now, I'm just so concentrating on being able to be kind of true to the essence of the tune, you know, and to where people came from. I don't listen to a lot of like Sun Ra. I don't listen to a lot of it. But if you want to play out music, that's one place to go. You know, I've played some Muhal Richard Abrams music, but surprisingly, his music is way inside. It's like so meticulously written out, but it sounds completely out. But it's all really written out. So there's so many approaches to playing outside. It's hard for me to talk about it. Usually when I play outside, it's more of like I'm trying to get an effect, an emotion, trying to get and it doesn't need harmony to get that emotion out, you know. But I'm kind of focusing more on just really, it's just so much, I think, more for me to really take care of before I get out, but I use it more as a device, you know, more as an emotional device, not as a way to play, you know what I'm saying? But practicing it, yeah, I mean, you just, shapes. I was going to talk a little bit about playing shapes because I used to practice that when I was in college, where you just, there's a bunch of different ways. Here's one way to do it. Make yourself a plan in your head that doesn't have anything to do with harmony, but it gives you some kind of direction. Okay, I'm going to use these 3 notes, you know, and I'm going to just try to really do something crazy with that, or this kind of motive. That's a better way of saying it, like this motive, up and then below. Boo-wee-ah, boo-wee-ah, boo-wee-oh, boo-wee-oh, and just try to do that, because that gives you kind of like something to grab onto. You know what I'm saying? Some way to do it. Another way, like compositionally, I do like to write out compositionally, because I think it can be really effective. Even writing like a bass player, just walk, but don't play any chords, you know. You can go 2 ways. You can try to really kind of listen to each other and kind of be somewhere, or you can just think rhythmically, motivically. But I think it's a good idea to practice different ways on how to play out. Like there's no one way, you know what I'm saying? I think doing that. Again, I'm not an expert on it. I don't really play, most of my improvisations are really based in chordal things. And I think when I play out, it kind of comes naturally. I'm not thinking like I just want to okay, I'm just got to say it like this right now, you know, and you know, you know, it's more like that. You know, go to artists and do it the same way you would do with Charlie Parker. What instrument do you play? What instrument do you play? You play trumpet. Yeah, so, okay, so it's this tune. He wrote, You guys know that tune? Who is this alto? Okay, I don't have my phone. Anyway, he's known for harmonic playing. It's a way of playing where you're making the melody. Ornette Coleman. Good Lord, my mind. Again, I haven't listened to a lot of Ornette, certainly not recently, but when I was in college, I listened to a lot of Ornette. Beautiful, beautiful way to play, quote unquote, out. It is out because it's not playing changes up and down. So it's another way of thinking about playing out. Like he's playing real kind of like scalarly, but it's not with changes. So just, I would just say everybody kind of broaden your idea of labels. You know, there's no, you know, it's like I studied with J.J. Johnson, and he told me, I said, what do? Do you do double tongue? Do you single tongue? How do you play so fast? He's like, you practice all of them. And it's really kind of obvious. You practice triple, double, doodle, you know, practice all of them, because different situations are going to call for different ways of articulating. So you're not just thinking so, you know, so in the box about things, you know. Because playing out is another kind of like, it's funny, I don't really hear people say that so much, you know, because it's more of, it's not really, for me, a way to play. We can play that way, you know. It's like you're not going to go probably make a living just playing completely unrelated to harmony music, you know what I'm saying? So we have to have kind of a bigger depth of how we fit that in. I think it's important, and I would encourage you all to play out, because basically find what you like, you know, find how you like to play. and get that better and better every day. You know, that's the main thing. So, but yeah.
When you practice a tune at home,
Yes.
Do you use like iReal Pro or something like that?
Yeah, I've used that. Yeah, sometimes. You know, my favorite way to do it is I use like a program where I can record, and I'll try to play. I'll put a click on, and I'll try to play the changes on the piano. Sometimes I'll even play a bass line, and then I try and play over it. You know, sometimes I'll do that, but a lot of times I'll just play it on the piano separately and then play it on the tune. But I do practice with a metronome a lot. You know, and I also practice without. I do both, but it helps keep me honest about where the time is and what I'm doing. And it helps me when I get out there into the real world to be able to play time, because we're so used to just being nice to ourselves when we're practicing and slowing down here and there. So yeah, I use it. It's a good tool. All the tools. J. Mabersol, you know, I don't do it a lot, but I use it, you know. I just think you have to do everything. The most important thing is going out and playing, sitting in, playing with other musicians. I think that's the best way. you know. So you're all going to sound absolutely brilliant then. After you're going to do everything I said tonight, you're going to sound brilliant. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here. You guys are very cool. Thanks a lot. All right.